the king, but nobody's ever gone this far before. Could it have been murder? At least one man thinks so, his personal physician, Dr. George Nicopolis. And in part 2 of our exclusive interview with Nicopolis, he reveals the secret fears that have haunted him for 13 years. Our Mary Garafello brings us a frightening Elvis whodunit.
As far as Elvis's death is concerned, I had never entertained the thought that he had committed suicide, but murder was entertained.
When Elvis died, millions of fans in a score of countries went into the kind of frenzied mourning expected for a head of state or religious leader. The still unanswered question, why did he die?
Basically, it is a natural death, and due to the cardiac arrhythmia, which is an irregular beating of the heart.
He was getting up to go into the bathroom, and he turned around and gave a soft little wave to me.
Elvis had been found slumped on the floor of his bathroom and rushed to hospital with Dr. Nicopolis and others trying to resuscitate him.
Elvis was taken here to Baptist Hospital, where a team of doctors continued the desperate struggle. But it was in vain. Elvis was dead, and had been dead for hours.
I couldn't believe that he died.
Dr. Nicopolis, who had been the king's personal physician for 11 years, was present at the autopsy.
We didn't find anything that I may have messed up on or misdiagnosed. And if he had any heart disease, we'd done treadmills, we'd done many cardiograms, and we'd done things that should have alerted us that he had some problem here.
Dr. Nicopolis was to bear the brunt of the blame for Elvis's death. And despite his acquittal on charges of overprescribing, fans still held him responsible.
To my recollection, there were 4 drugs that were found that I had prescribed out of the 12, 13, or 14 that were found in his body. And the others came from who knows where. They may have been from other doctors or other friends.
But what the fans didn't know, and what Dr. Nicopolis revealed for the very first time, is that shortly after his death, suspicions arose about the unthinkable. Elvis had been murdered. And Dr. Nicopolis says that someone very close to Elvis confessed he had killed the king.
For legal reasons, we have concealed the name revealed by Dr. Nicopolis.
Went around to several people and stated that he had killed Elvis. This is...
Dr. Nicopolis told us that at first he could not bring himself to believe it.
My initial speculation was that this was not true, that from the information that I had put into my computer was that was high on drugs and could have been hallucinating or whatever.
Reports reached the ears of Elvis's father, Vernon Presley, who took them seriously.
I discussed with Elvis's father, Vernon, that the possibilities of something else happening to Elvis other than an overdose or other than a heart attack or whatever. And Vernon had this burning desire that Elvis was killed.
Murray Silver is a writer who has talked extensively with Dr. Nicopolis and has exhaustively researched his claims. He is now collaborating with the doctor on a new book on the singer's death. He believes Elvis was murdered by at least one person close to him.
And this admission got back to Vernon. And Vernon was so concerned that Vernon hired 2 private detectives to investigate his son's death. Vernon was advised that his son's death was not natural.
He could have had a broken neck, or he could have had a concussion that I don't think would have been picked up at autopsy.
A death blow, a karate chop to the neck, would have been swift, powerful, would not have left so much as a bruise.
I don't think x-rays were done, not in my presence, and I don't think that probably with the information that we had that there was enough evidence to think about justify doing x-rays.
It's no secret that several members of the entourage took karate lessons with Elvis, including his. They all went as a gang. Whatever Elvis did, the Memphis Mafia, as they were called, took part in.
There are people that seriously think that there were motives in the change of the will that would have made one capable of doing away with Elvis.
I believe that a close member of his entourage who had been a beneficiary under Elvis's will later discovered that he had been deleted from a second will and in a fit of anger attacked Presley and caused a fatal blow to the neck.
At the time of his death, there were two wills. The will that was probated and the will that wasn't probated, which was his real will.
In recent months, author Albert Goldman and Elvis's stepbrother, David Stanley, claimed to have evidence that Elvis committed suicide. An extract from an updated biography was published in Life magazine.
He tried to commit suicide earlier, much earlier, way back in 1967. And he was pulled out of it at the last moment through the administration of oxygen and stimulants and so forth.
One motive driving the suicide theory, Elvis had felt betrayed in the months prior to his death by former aides, among them Red West, who had been a bodyguard.
If people are at the point of destroying themselves, it doesn't take much to make them do it.
But Dr. Nicopolis discounts the suicide theory.
I think it's a big zero. One, I don't think Elvis was capable of committing suicide. Two, he had too many opportunities to commit suicide at much more stressful times than that were going on at the time of his death, when he really had access to drugs more than what he had when he died. I think Elvis at this time was reorganizing his life.
We may never know the real cause of Elvis's death. We can only be sure that the king is dead and that no one can reign in his place.
The thing that I know within myself is that whatever killed Elvis, I had no part of. That there were many times that Elvis had the cards in his hand and he had the right cards to do whatever he wanted to do.
We've got plenty more of that tomorrow inside the king's bedroom. What the doctor saw. We'll be back in a moment.